Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar, Unlocking Enterprise Growth with 5G, sponsored by Tech Mahindra and Intel. Before we begin, I will cover a few housekeeping items. On the left-hand side of your screen is the Q&A. If you have any questions during the webcast, please type your question into the Q&A box and submit your questions to our speakers. All questions will be saved, so if we don't get to answer you, we may follow up via email. At the bottom of your audience console are multiple application widgets you can use. If you have any technical difficulties, please click on the yellow Help widget. Here you can find answers to common questions. A copy of today's slide deck is available for download in the green Resource List widget. And near the end of today's presentation, please take 1 minute to complete the survey that's open on your screen. Your feedback is extremely helpful. An on-demand version of the webcast will be available about 1 day after the event and can be accessed using the same audience link that was sent to you earlier today. I will now turn the event over to Heavy Reading's Principal Analyst, Gabriel Brown.
Thank you, Operator, and hello, welcome once again, everybody, to today's webinar, Unlocking Enterprise Growth with 5G. Thank you for joining. It's fantastic to have you with us. Hope it's going to be useful and worth your time. 5G introduces, as I think everybody knows, many new technical capabilities that can be used to improve and enable new operating processes across diverse industries. In this webinar, we're going to discuss how communication service providers, CSPs, can use 5G to unlock innovation in enterprise services, and on how enterprises themselves can apply the technology to their own operations. We'll be looking at things like the integration between 5G and operational technology, OT, the creation of a 5G enterprise application ecosystem, and actually the role of system integrators in bringing that together, and also the time between 5G and edge cloud infrastructure, whether that's in the public network or in private networks. As you heard, my name is Gabriel Brown. I'm Principal Analyst with Heavy Reading, where I lead our mobile network coverage. I am also your host and moderator for today. I am joined by our two expert guest speakers. First of all, I'd like to introduce Manish Mangal, Global Business Head for Network Services at Tech Mahindra, Tech M as sometimes known. Welcome, Manish. Great to have you with us. Could you say a few words about yourself and your role at Tech M?
Absolutely, Gabriel. Thank you so much. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Really excited to be here today and talking about this really important topic that we honestly believe is going to be a game changer in the future. My name is Manish Mangal. I hold the role as the Head of Network Services Business at Tech Mahindra, and I'm looking forward to sharing what we are doing in this space today.
Fantastic. Great to have you with us, Manish. Looking forward to it. And then we have Renu Navale, VP Data Platforms Group, General Manager, Smart Edge Platforms Division at Intel. Welcome, Renu. Likewise, could you say a bit about yourself and your role at Intel?
Sure, Gabriel. First of all, I want to echo Manish's excitement. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you, Gabriel, and to Heavy Reading for having us here. And I'm excited about partnering with Manish on this panel and webinar on our topic, which is Edge and 5G. And I lead, my name is Renu Navale, and I lead our edge computing efforts within the networking group or networking division within Intel. And again, excited to be here, and good day to all of you.
Fantastic. Thanks for coming. Now, just in terms of agenda here, I'll just push out to your slide. I'm going to give a very short introduction of one slide of introduction today. We'll then hear from Manish at Tech M, Renu at Intel. We have a panel discussion planned with some sort of pre-prepared talking points and questions to some extent. But I know both speakers in the prep are very keen to take audience questions. And I'd encourage you to submit them at any time as we go through. I'll be keeping an eye on the questions when they're talking, and maybe try and work one or two in during the course of the session or in the panel discussion. So do take advantage. I know they're open to questions, and they can be technical, they can be business, but you know, I really encourage you to do that. Okay, so my one slide of introduction here. I just wanted to give a very kind of quick overview of the 5G state of the market. 5G, as you know, is not a singular event, but it's a technology and service cycle we expect to last more than a decade and which will be delivered in phases. So in terms of a quick summary of progress, if we look at the top left here, we're in about 2 years of commercial operation now with 5G. I think we can say we're pretty deep into the first phase. Certainly from a standards and technology perspective, deployment and adoption is a little behind, but is clearly momentum there. Coverage continues to improve. Still lots to do, but you can see at the top left of the chart here, lots of low band, lots of DSS. Mid band is adding capacity in many markets. At Omdia, my colleagues at Omdia, we're a part of the Omdia research, over 60% of RAN spend, which is a big growth market the last few years, is on 5G this year. This won't peak for another 2 to 3 years. So there's a big investment going in. It's enabling, in terms of customer services, fast downlink, unlimited data plans, and so forth. And in the consumer market, this is starting to change a little bit, not radically, but a little bit, how we interact with devices and services. Not a radical change for now, but it is happening, and we may see that accelerate. Network launches here to the top right. I just want to put that in just to show this is a global deployment. It's an industrialized technology. This is very important to multinational enterprises, of course, which is really most large companies that they have we think about 5G as a network platform that is actually available in many of the markets where they operate. To the bottom left of the chart here, I just wanted to highlight the transition to 5G standalone. It's obviously very important to enterprise services, and that's underway with 5G core deployment, bringing lots of capabilities that take it beyond fast downlink and mobile broadband, for example, related to network slicing, better edge services support, particularly low latency and more reliability in different applications. I think in the fairly near term, over the next couple of years, we'll see SA-related service capabilities move into the public network in a fairly significant way. And of course, we're also going to see a lot more maturity in 5G private networks, which are in a kind of trial pilot phase, but advancing pretty well. To the middle here, there are lots of devices available now in 5G. One thing I did want to highlight, though, is we're seeing a lot more non-smartphone form factors. So, for example, we see industrial enterprise modules that you could use to instrument a piece of equipment or plant or vehicle, that kind of thing. We're even hearing from some of the technology suppliers about silicon announcements for things like chipsets that will support industrial IoT applications, the high performance applications for generally for local area. To the right here, just in terms of subs, again from Omdia Research, globally we're set to cross the billion subscriber mark at some point next year. We're somewhere around 600,000 at the end of 21. The majority of these are in China, but growth is now pretty rapid in other markets. The reason I'm bringing this up for today's discussion is I think the fact that this is a high volume market is very important to enterprise 5G, because it's this volume that actually incentivizes device chipset suppliers to iterate quickly, to introduce new generation of product, each time adding the various capabilities and features from the standard. So at the moment, we're seeing release 16 capabilities, very important to enterprise in many ways, being kind of developed rapidly and quite fast into the consumer market. Now, the enterprise, therefore, can feed off that volume, not necessarily for some of the super specific features. Maybe you need dedicated silicon for things like time-sensitive networking and so forth. But in many other features, what are relatively low-volume enterprise applications on their own terms are actually able to ride these volumes and make use of really state-of-the-art silicon and huge investment there from that volume. So I think that's very important and a great primer for the enterprise. So as I said, we're deep into phase one. Things are going, I think, about as well as predicted. And enterprise 5G is now starting to emerge from the trial and pilot phase. The roadmap looks very strong. I think recently 3GPP announced release 18, which is in the study phase now, but that will actually equate to 5G Advanced. So we have a number of years in roadmap already kind of in development. With that, I'm going to hand over to Manish at TechM to take us through the next part. Manish, please.
Absolutely. Thank you, Gabriel. And I think one of the things that you mentioned in your slide, 822 devices launched globally. That's just phenomenal. I think we started the journey as an industry in 5G a couple of years ago, and we see the deployments of 5G are spreading like wildfire almost. So that's a great news for everyone who is looking to take advantage of what the 5G can enable. Particularly today, we are talking about the enterprises. And I think, when we started the journey of 5G, we always said that the 5G is not going to be about just consumers. It's really going to about enterprise and how it's going to really unlock a tremendous number of opportunities in the enterprise segment. What that practically means, as we look at it from our perspective, is that what's so different about 5G? One could say that 5G is really about speed, latency, and density, and that's really spoken about umpteen number of times. That yes, 5G can give 10 times a speed over 4Gs. The latencies are tremendously fast, and you can do millions of devices per square kilometer to be able to support the density of the machines that are going to require connectivity at the end of the day. But we also see this as an opportunity to change the game completely in terms of delivering experiences, and hence we are seeing 5G is really about experience. How a operator and the ecosystem can enable a whole new set of experiences of enabling connectivity. And this really builds on this pyramid of our strong history, but a very short history of the telecom industry, if you really look at it from a respective other peer industries point of view. And we started as an industry with 3G, 2G, and 3G, which was really all about voice. 4G really gave the smartphone euphoria in the market that really brought the idea of how to expose the ecosystem, and the entire application ecosystem opened up primarily for the consumers. And really with now 5G, we are talking about how to deliver experiences to the enterprises enabled by the edge. And I think this is very important, that the other than the air interface speeds, the latencies, and the density that's enabled by 5G, it's also a fundamental architecture shift in terms of how the cloud now get closer. And this is very relevant for enterprises, because over the last 10 years, 15 years, in fact, the enterprises focused on taking their on-prem applications onto the cloud so that they actually get the advantage of the scale, the elasticity that cloud provides. And now it's really about how do I bring the cloud closer to me so that I can really enable newer experiences associated with it. And 5G, along with the distributed edge cloud architecture, is an enabler for that. Let me walk you through a day in a production life. And I think to me, this is when things start to get real, right? So there is a technology, and the enablement of the technology of how it brings to life is really important. So we kind of have mapped out how a day in various industries would look like it. And I'm just showing you today an example of how it will look like in oil production systems. So just imagine this is an oil rig production house where you have a 5G network locally available on the rig. And you have a situation in a day where you suddenly found that in one of your very critical equipment, which is your submersible pump, actually there is a issue there. Some overheating, over temperature has shown up, and suddenly the alarms have gone into that state. Now, what that means is that the minute the alarms goes there, it starts to translate into the actual dashboard, right? Where you would say that, okay, this alarm comes in, it starts to trigger the monitoring of what happened there. And there is an auto things that happens there. You could say, let's slow down the speed of that pump so that there is nothing more damage that happens. That decision that has to be taken immediately. So having a mech local onto that rig allows you to be able to take the decision immediately and then reduce the damage control. And at the same time, it basically says that how do we now automate the ability to dispatch a technician to go in there so that the alarms get created, the work order gets generated from there, the work order gets dispatched to a technician on site. Now, the technician on site, along with the work order, really gets the details about, for this kind of an equipment, what is the amount of stuff that they have to carry with them, the tools that they have to carry with them, right? So they get a whole list of the tools that they can take along with them. And at the same time, they also have a very, very strong security precautions and protocols. So the PPE kit has to be worn. And as the technician walks into the area, the remote surveillance video actually looks into the technician and ensures that all the security protocols are met, without which there is no access into the field, and then you have to come back and fix it. So that automation and the decision that happens locally becomes very critical. Now, once that gets cleared, the technician actually gets to the pump. Now, of course, there is a numerous number of things that can go wrong at that point of time, and there is nobody individual who can go in and fix all of them. So what happens is that as the technicians get there, and it starts to look at what is required, they get supported by the AR-based maintenance manuals and protocols. So they can actually, they could be working on the tool, working on the machine, while at the same time they're getting this video AR-enabled capability to be able to look at and say what do they have to do to fix it, and they can actually do the job on the site and get it done, assisted by somebody who's sitting remotely. If there is a special expertise required, that can be called out at that point of time. One thing that you will notice as I'm walking through the slides is at the bottom where it says data consumption, that's really a demonstration of how, as we go through these steps, the amount of data required to make these things happen. And that's really why 5G is so important, because you really need the ability to be able to consume that amount of data. So now walking back into the life of the day, the technicians basically fix the issue, the maintenance issue is resolved. And as the technician is walking back, and we kind of just simulated this scenario, it could be independent on its own, that actually there is a fall. Now, part of the PPE kit includes a smart helmet, which has an accelerometer, and that triggers and that assesses that there is a fall and there is a safety issue here. And as soon as the technician falls, the automatic generation of a safety and emergency goes back into the system that actually triggers the ambulances to come on the site, or the medical doctors on the site, whoever is required to actually come there to take care of the situation. This is really, when you look at it from a day of how things can come together, all of this really is about experience. All of this is really about how you make all of this seamless, fast, and so easy to consume that really nobody is talking about what is the underlying infrastructure. You're only talking about how this infrastructure enables the ability to live this kind of an environment, change, and effectively, if you have reduced the downtime on that machine or the pump, it has a significant return of investment, or significant savings in terms of reducing the downtime or reducing any other further losses of human or other equipment. So this becomes very critical. And as we kind of look at what 5G means, is that it's really an enabler for an experience like this, to be able to say that how a day in a life would look like it. Now, as they say, and as the saying goes, it takes a village to raise a child. It's the same thing with this kind of enablement as well. It takes an ecosystem to bring 5G to life for enterprises. It's not just one entity or one person. It's really a combination of variety of players that come together to make this happen. What that means is that we need the infrastructure. Without infrastructure, nothing happens. And Intel phenomenally does the job of creating the capabilities so that these infrastructures can be realized. So whether it's a radio infrastructure, whether it's an edge platform, or whether it's a connectivity back into the rest of the world with SD-WAN, or local core network, doesn't matter what kind of infrastructure, that is one part of the entire industry and the ecosystem. The second part is really about somebody has to deploy and operate that, and hence we work very closely with the operators who actually have the licenses to be able to do that, or in certain cases when there is a private licenses available and enterprises want to build their own infrastructure, we provide services and we provide managed services for them to manage and operate that kind of an infrastructure. So somebody has to be an infrastructure provider in this environment. Then you need a variety of devices, and some of these devices will have 5G enablement, some of them have 4G today, some of them are only Wi-Fi. So you need a full suite of ecosystem of the devices that actually have the ability to connect to the nearest edge platform available to them. You of course need the ISV platforms, which we call as sort of all the other platforms like the IoT gateways, all the analytics platform that are required to be able to make the analysis, make an assessment of data, what's coming in, and being able to make decisive action on the spot. So there is a whole suite of platforms and the partners that we work with required to actually make the ISV ecosystem come together. And then, of course, all of that is underpinned by a very high level of security. And especially in the example that I showed, it's a highly secured environment, and any other enterprises, by the way, similarly the same way. So created by a security parameters inside and outside that protects all of this to come together. So if you think from that point of view, is that the experience that we want to enable for our enterprises in their day, so that every consumer within the enterprise who's going to consume these services, they actually live the life the way they live today. They are working on the digital transformation, they work on the application, and they really solve that. All of this has to come together seamlessly for them. And this is really where, we play an important role as an integrator. We have defined that this part of the role is called continuous integration. It's not going to be one-time integration, as the technology and the software lifecycle is much fast changing. So we have basically taken a role of being this continuous integrator that puts all of these partners' ecosystem together, working closely with partners like Intel and others in this space who make all these different boxes work. Really, that's our role. That's the role that we play. And when you say all said and done, as a continuous integrator, our job is to simply make things work for our customers, help them enable what is required. And the way we do this, we have created a very robust and methodical approach of how we can unlock these kind of opportunities, which starts basically from imagining, right? So we help customers visualize what a day in their life would look like if all these 5G and edge are enabled. Then we help them design the transformation roadmap. So a lot of times, it's not there. There are certain types of capabilities that are required to be added, and versus others where they might not require. So we create those roadmaps, a playbook as we call it, that allows them to visualize what will it take to go from where they are towards this day in life that they want to achieve. And then we are not the talkers. We are the guys who actually can get things done. So we execute. So we work closely with our customers and an outcome base where we deliver business and we deliver technical outcomes that they are intending to produce at the end of the day. And this is really the method that we use and across the life cycle of where they are in a variety of different industries, whether it's a manufacturing, so the set of solutions that come along in the manufacturing.next, whether it's in oil and gas, utilities, healthcare, port, banking. I already spoke to you about the oil part. So the way we are working with the industry is really building the ecosystem, integrating the ecosystem, and most importantly, the part of visualization of the future is not about one use case. Bulk of the conversation has been about, is there a use case or the use case that will enable everything? It's really about creating this platform on which a variety of use cases can be developed as we go along, just the way 4G came along with the App Store and the Play Store that gave everybody to innovate on top of it. We are looking to become a partner. We are working with a broad ecosystem and are excited to really bring this ecosystem together to make these things simply work for our customer. So that's the story. That's really what we're excited about. I know Renu has got some really exciting things to say as well. So I'm going to pass the baton over from here, and we'll take the questions later on. But I'll pass the baton over for Renu to share some of the exciting things that Intel is doing in that space.
Thank you so much, Manish. And I think I'd like to continue from where Manish talked about, as in how do we partner together, with partners like TechM in order to deliver technologies for the infrastructure platforms so we can unlock enterprise growth with both 5G as well as edge. When we look at, what is going on in our industry, there's a perfect storm. There's a perfect storm of, data explosions. You heard from Gabriel about the number of new devices being launched, and that's only going to increase the amount of data that we have in our cloud, in our network, and at the edge. And all of this is being further fueled by both AI and analytics, as well as the experiences that 5G can bring about. And what we're seeing is that the edge is becoming this point of convergence where not only are heterogeneous workloads converging, but they're converging with 5G, IoT, as well as AI analytics. We're also seeing, in order to unlock business growth or business outcome for enterprises, it's very important for them to converge their existing IT workloads with OT workloads, as well as bring in the promise of connectivity technology or CT workloads, especially around 5G, in order for them to take advantage of the experience platform that Manish just talked about. How can enterprises take advantage of this experience platform to, at the end of the day, realize business value or business outcome. At the end of the day, all of the enterprises will want to see, a difference in their bottom line as well, which could be TCO savings or time to market acceleration. Now, from Intel's role, for the converged edge, which includes 5G, we also had to take into account, okay, what type of problems can we solve, that's critical for us to bring about the realization of, the experience platforms being deployed that takes advantage of both 5G as well as edge computing. For most enterprises, they are not familiar with the networking complexity, or they want an easy button to help deal with the networking complexity. They don't want to have to deal with the RAN of the distributed core, or with some of the 4G and 5G technologies, or the coexistence with Wi-Fi or wired technologies. They want the ecosystem, in particular technologies from partners like Intel as well as TechM, to be able to resolve all of that complexity. The cloud-like agility, we've had so much success in the cloud with public and private cloud infrastructure. How do we continue to bring in that agility and scalability into the edge as well, such that we can, bring in that agility even for our 5G experience platforms? And then very important to enterprises as well as end users is privacy and security. Most of the enterprises want data sovereignty, and they want to be able to retain their data on site, in addition to taking advantage of the low latency or the density and other types of capabilities from 5G. Last but not least, it's a huge ecosystem. Not only is it, we need to work closely with the telco ecosystem or the operators, but we also need to work with the enterprise ecosystem, and in particular, ecosystem that is very highly verticalized, an industrial ecosystem, which may be very different from a retail ecosystem or very different from a healthcare ecosystem. So our ecosystem partnership, our partnership with TechM, the technologies that Intel provides for the infrastructure platforms, we really need to look at all of these different requirements and challenges as we design our products or design our capabilities in order to support the enterprises. From the Intel side, we have, several technologies that we provide in order to help realize the infrastructure platforms for 5G and edge. I won't go into each of these in detail, but most of you know that we do have a very diverse silicon portfolio of CPUs, accelerators for different workloads like AI or media, storage technologies, FPGA technologies, and also graphics technologies. In addition to this, we have been working on various optimizations that's needed for 5G and edge, such as, for our Intel FlexRAM for, our radio access or 5G workloads, real-time TSN, TSE capabilities that's critical for industrial use cases. And in fact, even the use case that Manish described, real-time determinism is so critical to make sure that we have, the low latency responses to any kind of critical mishaps in, an oil industry or any other type of industry, as well as other types of capabilities like security, telemetry, and resource orchestration, all of which are critical in order to help realize the 5G and edge platforms. In addition, Intel has technologies that we call the Intel Smart Edge open software offering. What it does is it not only takes advantage of the underlying silicon and some of these other software optimizations I talked about, it makes it easy for our enterprise customers to help address the network complexity, or give them an easy button to not only address the network complexity, but to very easily be able to onboard applications and services onto their edge platform. And we have a commercial version of that as well called Intel Smart Edge that is specifically tailored for on-premise enterprise edge deployments. And they're focusing on some of the private network deployments as well as the universal CPE. In addition, we collaborate a lot with our IoT vertical segments in order to make sure that all of these technologies that we put together for the infrastructure platforms can be, we can work with the vertical supply chain for various, industrial segments like in various segments like industrial, retail, healthcare, cities and transportation, and others. And we focus a lot on making sure we're able to scale these solutions as well by working with partners like TechM. We want to make sure that, hey, we're not only reaching out to the entire ecosystem and the developer base, we are also making sure that it can be very scalable to accelerate deployments. And at the end of the day, again, deliver the TCO savings or the time to market acceleration that our enterprises are looking for. I'll just touch on a couple of very quick examples here. We have been working very closely with one of the operators in China, China Unicom, where we help them design a platform as a service for their edge multi-access edge computing platform for 5G, where they're able to onboard various applications, not only from China Unicom, but from other PRC cloud providers like Tencent and Baidu as well. Another example is a European operator, Cellnex, that actually has deployed a smart city use case in the city of Barcelona. And the key partners for this that we worked with were Lenovo and Nearby Computing. Now, these customer examples are just tip of the iceberg. This is just the beginning of what promises to be, exciting new experiences for our enterprise customers with 5G and the edge. And this is where, our strong partnership with TechM and the wider ecosystem, and you heard from Manish as well, how important even the wider ecosystem is. It's really important that we continue these strong partnerships in order to help accelerate edge and 5G deployments. And I'll end with, our role, even from Intel, we cannot do this alone. We need strong partners like TechM. And as we work with the ecosystem, our goal is to continue to, expand on the scale that we have been working on for the last, several years. How do we continue to expand the ecosystem partners? We have more than 400 edge solutions. We have 24,000 end user deployments. How do we continue our strong partnership with TechM to expand upon these ecosystem deployments or ecosystem accelerations? So with that, I will hand it back to Gabriel, and looking forward to questions from the audience as well.
Fabulous. Thank you, Renu. We do indeed have the first few questions coming in now. Do take advantage of that. I'm having a look at those as we go through. But yeah, please submit at any time now through the Q&A tab on your screen there. Thanks for that walkthrough, Renu. Really good to kind of frame the whole of edge discussion now. I have a few questions on that already. We're now moving into the panel session part of the event. This is where we have some sort of pre-prepared discussion topics. I'm going to sprinkle in the Q&A here as well, and then we'll have just dedicated Q&A time in a moment. So the way this works, I just introduce the topic, put a question to one or other of the speakers. They give me their answer. I'll see if the other speaker has a response. Maybe we'll have a little discussion around the topic or introduce an audience question. The first of these, I'm actually going to target at Manish from TechM. Manish, we're talking obviously here about enterprise and unlocking the growth and 5G and everything, but I wanted to just bring it back to the topic at the moment, obviously, which is the pandemic, and just try and get a view from you how this is impacting enterprises in their daily operations right now. To what extent can 5G help with this? I think we can make a theoretical case, but how ready are enterprises really to adopt these new operating models? Manish from TechM.
Thank you, Gabriel. I'll start with this statement that one of our customers, CIO, said to us in one of our advisory board that the COVID became the chief digital officer for them. What it meant was that clearly COVID, the pandemic, really created this sense of extreme urgency in operating at a different model where not everybody is on-premise inside their facility working together. So the model of operations of how to keep the enterprises running when the people are working from remote was literally forced on all of us to be executed in an extremely short period of time. Now, we look at the pandemic, which is good for 16 or 15, 16 months behind us, or old now that we've been dealing with us. I must say that the industry overall across the board has adapted so wonderfully in this new environment. What it required was to really fundamentally change the necessity for automation to become the center of everything. Earlier the automation used to be a nice to have at the edge. With this pandemic, that really became open, and that's going to stay because even in today, as we ease from the pandemic situation, and hopefully this completely goes away from all of our lives very shortly, the hybrid model of people working from home and working from the office will continue to stay for the longest period of time. As a result, the kind of automation tools that have been put in together as part of the digital transformation journey, and we at Tech Mahindra have had the unique pleasure of working with a variety of different enterprises in helping them execute those digital transformation journeys in the last couple of years in accelerated fashion with automation. So that's a premise in which the automation has become most important for them. In last 1 year, the conversations around 5G have become a lot more prominent as well, to say, how can I now take advantage of the 5G and visualize the kind of day in the oil production that I was describing about, and just for every industry. So we are engaged with a numerous number of customers in the trials, in the execution roadmap for them, and I do clearly see a very strong sign of enterprises adopting this 5G for enterprises with distributed edge cloud to be able to actually supercharge their automation journeys and completely change the business model and the operating procedures.
Yeah, thanks, Manish. I think my observation is that obviously networking and technology ecosystem's done supremely well, and it's been excellent. I think it's also shown us kind of how much better things can be, how much more can be done in future. If we move to this new model. What I wanted to bring you back to, though, is this idea that particularly where you're talking about physical implementations and cyber-physical integration is the genesis of 5G in many ways. It's what 5G is largely or often about. How do enterprises, are they able to be on site, installing new platforms, installing new equipment, things like that? It seems at the moment, a lot of businesses are short of staff, et cetera, et cetera. They're keeping the lights on and keeping running is the priority.
Absolutely. No, actually, in fact, I must mention that one of the really cool things about 5G is that it's really built as a cloud-native infrastructure, right? So the idea of a cellular, so we want to get the best of the both worlds. On one hand, we want a robust coverage and security built with the cellular technology like 5G. At the same time, we want the simplicity of deployment and management of Wi-Fi. So with 5G, given the way it's built and architected as a cloud-native infrastructure, we have now reached the point where the deployment of 5G is extremely simple. It's actually getting closer and closer to the way Wi-Fi's are deployed, which is take the base station, plug it into the site, get it operational, and everything happens remotely from a configuration perspective and provisioning and service activation. Everything happens, even the monitoring, the service assurances can happen remotely. So the necessity for a large-scale on-site team who are a set of radio experts and the wireless experts has really significantly gone down. And that is precisely why, given the necessity of the pandemic and the capability of the 5G, it starts to blend together and say that, yes, we can actually make it happen. And we are seeing that in practical fields today. And we have done few deployments already that actually have gone in the direction of, without on-site folks, just being able to get the deployment done remotely.
Okay, good stuff. So let's see, before we go to Renu here, there's a question in that's exactly on that topic, actually, so I'm going to read it out. The question is, just want to press you a little bit on the typical duration or time span to deploy an end-to-end 5G SA deployment for simpler use cases, whether it's in a manufacturing, oil rig, school district, enterprise. Give us a rough number for from conception to deployment and operation. 3 months, 6 months?
Absolutely, 3 to 6 months actually is what I was going to say. And in fact, the longest pole in the tent is always the site availability, even in the cellular environment. In the enterprise, that actually makes it a lot more easier because if you're looking at a manufacturing plant, the sites are available inside the plant itself. So you don't have a site acquisition time and all that, which typically is a longer lead time. So being able to get purely from a technology perspective to envisioning what kind of an infrastructure is required, whether it's a 2-cell site, 2 sites, 2 radios, or 10 radios, that can be done very quickly, can be shipped, and literally it can be deployed in 3 months. So we have seen that scale of the deployment for simple use cases. And then, of course, the whole idea is that once you do the basic deployment of the infrastructure, it becomes a platform on which the use cases can continue to evolve. Then it just becomes a journey of saying, I got the simple infrastructure ready. Now let's just make 1, 2, 3, 10 more use cases as they come along. Fundamentally, we are all set to go.
Okay, good stuff. With that, we're going to move to the next talking point on private networks. I'm going to turn this one to Renu at Intel first. We had some questions as well on this, Renu. So the topic here is private networks and 5G Edge. And my question is really, given we have many connectivity options, all of which do provide very capable wired, Wi-Fi 6, public 5G, private LTE. What does private 5G bring that you don't get from alternatives here? To Renu at Intel.
Yeah, great question, Gabriel. So first of all, I think the way I see it, these connectivity technologies or access technologies need to coexist. Wi-Fi, wired, public as well as private 5G, 4G, they need to be able to coexist, which means we need to be able to support what I call a multi-access, connectivity environment for all of these enterprises. And the type of advantages 5G can bring in, especially to the enterprises, is a certain level of reliability and security that they don't get with Wi-Fi, or better management of, better management against, dead spots or drop-ins that is quite common with Wi-Fi. The other most important technology aspect of 5G that will truly help with delivering what Manish described as an experiences platform, when we think about it, is really the ability to network slice. So by using network slicing and using different slices to deliver, differentiated services, as well as guaranteed, either quality of service or guaranteed, service capabilities to the enterprises, is really where 5G can differentiate between, wide abilities. At the end of the day, you want to coexist. There will be enterprises that say, hey, some of this equipment, I just want to retain, this, let it be as is, let it be wired and Wi-Fi. But all of these things, they are willing to upgrade or update to take advantage of, the private 5G capabilities. And I think with the private networking capability, they're able to get some of the data sovereignty, which means, the data is on their premise. The data is not leaving their premise, which guarantees a certain level of security, privacy, and sovereignty of the data that the enterprise is so very highly priced, for their own end customers as well. That is truly where, private 5G can kind of make a difference for our enterprises.
Good stuff. I think there's a really interesting crossover between your data sovereignty point and Manish's comment on security earlier. We'll maybe come back to that in a moment. We've had several questions. I'm going to read one of them out because there's probably several here that are more or less similar. Question here: do you believe that non-public networks market for 5G systems in vertical markets will open up opportunities for new 5G players, or will it still be dominated by the traditional cellular operators? Now, there's 3 or 4 questions on some version of that. Renu at Intel, do you want to have a stab at it, and then I'll take Manish's view as well?
Sure, and I believe that there are definitely opportunities for new players, right? I mean, this is, this is the tip of the iceberg still, or, we are still in the, kind of a nascent market creation with private 5G and edge and delivering business outcomes to the enterprises. So definitely, room for additional players, and especially even enterprises. Some enterprises have expressed a desire to want to manage this themselves. And going back to what we had said earlier, right, which is, hey, there is the complexity. If we make it as simple as possible for our enterprises to be able to deal or manage with the network complexity, then, we are trying to make it easier for them to manage it themselves, or potentially other ecosystem players to manage it themselves as well. But that said, I think that journey is going to take some time, and this is where the expertise of the traditional telco ecosystem, the operators, all of that is still very, very relevant and valid, and they have been working on networking, maintaining the networks or networking evolution for the last several decades, and that is very hard to replace or lose, which is where I do see still a very strong role even for our traditional telco ecosystem and operators to play here. And it'll be interesting to see how the simplicity we provide to the enterprises and all the decades of experience and expertise the telco ecosystem brings, how they begin to merge into one another.
Yeah. Okay, good stuff. Manish, could I take your view on that? I mean, I tend to quite strongly agree with Renu that I think telecom operators personally, I think they're going to have a very strong role, even if they're deploying standalone or isolated systems, as it were, from the public network. But in engagements you're involved in, Manish, how much of the enterprise?
Gabriel, I think we might have lost the connectivity. Let me take the question actually that. The way I see it is that 5G, the great thing about 5G, it's not a zero-sum game. I think we are looking at 5G, which is significantly going to expand the opportunities or the spaces of possibilities and opportunities for the industry as a whole. So this is not about, whether the operators will play a role or the new age players will play the role. It's not a question of or, it's a question of and, actually, because the amount of opportunities that we are seeing in the market is just exponentially so much higher that everybody will have a fantastic opportunity to grow their businesses, take a prominent role in helping drive this ecosystem. And I get a lot of confidence from the fact that our analyst community in the industry have done a tremendous job over the last 15 years in really analyzing the new technology trends, the new business trends, and being able to make judgment and assessments about what does it look like for the industry. Whether it was about the transformation in the voice side with the IMS becoming very important at that point of time, or whether it is about 4G and the roadmap of the 4G and now 5G. The timing may be here and there, but ubiquitously, every analyst report that I read talks about a great amount of opportunity and investment coming into the space of building these private networks, and hence the space for operators and for the private network players to coexist and really drive this and support the enablement will absolutely be there. The other thing that I also see in that is that because it will coexist, it becomes even more important to coexist so that the experience is actually seamless. Because a lot of these enterprises, when they actually want to connect the factories, like I take an example of the factories, it's not about making one factory a digital factory. It's about if there are 20 factories, they all need to be interconnected to make it as a digital set of factories so that all information communication flow seamlessly. That's where everybody from a private public players come into coexistence. And proof is right in front of us. You look at the CBRS spectrum that got auctioned not too long ago, the amount of investment the enterprises did in that space to be able to actually take the control and destiny so that they can actually do that convergence of the IT and OT network for themselves, right? So absolutely, I think it's a great question. And we from Tech Mahindra's perspective, we very strongly work with our carrier partners as well as with enterprises, and we are working together to make all of these things work for them.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. We've had a really good question come in, actually. It sort of preempts my next talking points. I'm going to ask it first of all to you, Manish, and then to Renu. The question is, how will existing applications be impacted by edge computing? That's the question. I want to actually add on 5G as well to that. Do the applications that you already have, do they need to be kind of rewritten for this new platform and this new architecture? Is it a whole process overhaul? So first to Manish and then to Renu.
I think it's a fantastic question, and I think it's actually the crux of the velocity and the speed at which things can happen. Over the period of time, I see absolutely yes. And in fact, we use a term called appification. So sort of what I was describing earlier during my talk, that if you look at the enterprise's applications, right? The journey for the enterprise applications, which are all custom built, private, closed, inside the on-prem, that's the world that we lived in. And that was not too long ago. The community of all enterprises and the CIOs and the industry came together towards, we really need to get the scale, and this was not going to work, to move all of these applications on the cloud, right? So the entire cloud journey for the last 15 years have been really about taking these applications to the cloud, and the infrastructure, which is SD-WAN, to support that agility of the applications to be served from either of the places, whether it's an on-prem or on the cloud. Even today, we live in a hybrid world where there are applications that still needs to reside on-prem, and they are still custom applications. They cannot be changed. But there is a journey that we have taken as an industry to make some of those applications move into the cloud. I kind of see the same journey coming in, which is what we're calling as an appification of the applications. A lot of these applications that are on the cloud, I absolutely expect them to become some of them rewritten, some of them changed, and in some cases it may not be required to be rewritten at all, because the edge platform could itself be a cloud platform. So take those applications, but bringing closer to the edge. That will happen. Every application will have its own journey of when they will be ready to be served on-prem with an edge cloud platform, but with the cloud native architecture, so that all the things that we have learned and enabled with the cloud native architecture over the last 10 years, they get preserved in the edge cloud as well. So that to me is not only a great question, but honestly, it's going to be the most important thing for us as an industry to drive towards creating more and more applications at the edges. And by the way, I would only add one more point at that time, is that this is also an opportunity to completely innovate. So I expect a whole lot of new players to come in to say that I'm going to look at this from an edge first. Similar to a lot of countries where mobility first has been the philosophy, because fixed networks have never been penetrated deep enough. Similarly, in this world also, I see a lot of newer applications will say, I want to start at edge first, and then I'll see where I need to go to cloud. So a lot of innovation is something that I'm expecting to happen there.
Yeah. Okay, good stuff. I'm going to come right back to you in a moment for that. But Renu at Intel, want to add a comment or two?
Yeah, no, completely agree with everything that Manish was just saying. In addition, when we look at some of the technologies that are being used in the development or creation of our edge platforms, there's a lot of cloud native technologies being used, or what was cloud technologies being brought into the edge as well. The containerization or virtualization, or the ability to run different types of applications in multiple containers, and orchestration and management. All of this can lend itself to the helping manage the scenario that Manish was just describing, which is potentially some applications stay as is but can run on separate containers, or some get actually modified or morphed to take advantage of the cloud native infrastructure, the Kubernetes or container infrastructures that we have, and others, as he described, our developer community may find a completely innovative way to redo the application to deliver even more value to the enterprises or the end users or customers. So both are, the ideal nirvana is, hey, write once, run anywhere. and we want to make it easier with our cloud native technologies. And as we bring that to the edge and start to employ more of an edge first mantra, we will need to see how the application or the applications start to evolve to take advantage of the underlying cloud native and orchestration and management technologies as well.
Good stuff. So I said I was going to come back, and Renu, if you want to comment on this, you can, but Manish, I wanted to take this back to you. We've had a question came in fairly early doors, actually, a very good question, I think. We've possibly been a little remiss about not addressing it already. The question is, what about traditional business connectivity applications like Layer 2 or Layer 3 VPN over 5G? Do you see 5G operators providing this service? Now, you've already mentioned SD-WAN, I think, in your earlier comment. Several people are asking about network slicing as an application. For most CSPs, the bread and butter enterprise services are these types of applications. What do you see happening there?
Yeah, no, I kind of divide this into 3 layers. If you take the underlay layer of infrastructure itself, typically whether it's a fiber or coax or something going on, I see 5G playing a prominent role in that last mile connectivity. That the kind of speeds that we are able to get with 5G now really starts to mimic the speeds that a lot of the enterprises require. Not the large enterprises perhaps, but a lot of the smaller ones certainly, and even to the extent of the medium-sized enterprises. So I see sort of a 5G playing a adjunct to a fiber as an infrastructure, access technology. The layer on top of it, which whether it's an MPLS or SD-WAN and technologies that allows the decision making to happen faster or redirection of the traffic from it gets to serve. One of the studies that we saw was that around 66% of the traffic will start to get served locally within the plant and within the enterprises, which means that a lot of the data is going to start getting pushed towards closer and closer to the edge. And only 33% will go into the WAN infrastructure back into the core somewhere. That, while from a percentage perspective, may look like a significant downshift towards what do I do with the existing protocols and existing technologies? Would they still survive and will they still have its play? It's really, again, to my earlier point, it's not a zero-sum game. I think the demand for the layer 2 services, the demand for MPLS plus SD-WAN and the different configurations, that will only grow because the amount of data that's going to get consumed with all of these applications in the enterprises is going to be so exponentially higher that it just cannot be served by the current infrastructure. Hence, when we put it together of all the data consumptions that is required, that's going to still drive even if only 33% of that actually goes back into the core, there will still be a tremendous amount of growth in there. Having said that, I do see a higher level of technology transformation in the access where more software-defined technologies will exist. So SD-WAN will become more and more important to be able to live and move the traffic as fast as the applications are going to move. So I do see the shift more and more towards that, but that's going to happen irrespective to whether 5G for enterprise happen or not, because we are seeing that already in the last 10 years happen.
Yeah, there's a fantastic, for anyone who's interested, a fantastic proof of concept that AT&T did with the Metro Ethernet Forum, where they're running SD-WAN links to retail premises. Each retail premises has an edge compute install, but you still need to, as you say, take the data in and out, place the applications locally and things like that. So it is a kind of a merged system. It's a really great demo, actually, on the Metro Ethernet Forum site there that AT&T, with a whole bunch of partners, like we've been talking about, have run. Renu, did you want to come in on that or move on?
No, we can move on, Gabriel. I think Manish addressed it.
Okay, so where are we at then? We've kind of already done this one about the system integration a little bit, I think. So let's leave that for a moment. And look, we're right up to time as well. We've been flying through these topics. And looking at my clock, we're actually out of time. So with that, I think we better close the call. Tons of questions. Thanks everybody who's asked a question. Sorry we didn't get through all of them. We'll look at the show report after, and where appropriate, we'll ask either Manish or Renu to contact you. You can't necessarily expect a reply, but if it's appropriate and they wish to, they'll be able to. That little Q&A flew by. Must be because the speakers and responses we had. So I'd love to thank, first of all, Renu Navale from Intel for being with us today. Thank you, Renu.
Thank you, Gabriel, and thank you all for attending this webinar and for the great questions as well.
Good stuff. Thank you. And then to Manish Mangal from Tech Mahindra. Thank you, Manish.
Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you, everyone who attended. And thank you again for fantastic questions. And I leave you with the thought that on behalf of Tech Mahindra, we invite you to join us into this exciting journey of unlocking the value for enterprises with 5G.
Fabulous. Just remains for me to say thanks to everybody for attending and participating today. Thank you very much and goodbye.
Thank you.